air in the financial district of Aldgate was always heavy, a constant pressure of ambition and quiet dread. But for Mr. Julian Thorne, the dread was no longer quiet. It was January 2021, a time when the world was fractured and distracted, yet the cold, analytical heart of the market was convulsing. Thorne, 52, an executive director at the private equity firm of Stone Harbor Capital, sat in a glass-walled office 20 stories above the street, the silence of the room amplified by the digital cacophony echoing in the news feeds below. His tailored silk tie felt like a noose, a symbol of the control he was rapidly losing. His firm had placed a colossal short bet against Techmart Solutions, a struggling regional electronics chain that his models and his entire career assured him was destined for failure. $3.8 billion leveraged on a certainty that had dissolved overnight, not by a market shift or a new innovation, but by an unexpected, coordinated, and deeply personal rebellion from the digital frontier movement. The media was now calling the meme stock frenzy. On the mahogany table before him, the firm's daily valuation report lay open, a sheet of paper that screamed a $700 million loss. A figure so large it didn't just represent money. It represented the careers, retirements, and livelihoods of hundreds of people, all placed on the altar of Julian Thorne's absolute conviction. He ran a trembling hand across his perfectly shaved jaw. His skin cooled the movement jerky. A small, almost imperceptible tremor that betrayed the veteran calm he had cultivated over 3 decades. Detective Marcus Cole of the Financial Crimes Unit Internal Affairs sat opposite him, not in an interrogation room but in the sterile neutrality of a legal conference space, the atmosphere thick with the smell of stale coffee and unacknowledged power. Cole, younger, wearing a suit that was functional rather than fashionable, leaned back slightly, his posture relaxed, but his eyes dark, watchful, and unforgiving never left Julian's face. "Mr. Thorne," Cole began, his voice a calm, heavy documentary narrator's tone. "The initial loss is quantifiable. The pressure is immense. But we're here to discuss the response." Julian cleared his throat, a dry, rasping sound. "We acted within the parameters of the stress test, Detective. The market was irrational. A black swan event." "Irrationality," Cole echoed, picking up a pen and tapping the glass tabletop once. A sharp, metallic sound that seemed deafening in the silence. "Or coordination. We have access to the internal chat logs. Julian, we see the panic setting in the moment. The price of Techmart Solutions, or TMS, as your team called it, broke $50 a share. We see the desperate, late-night calls. And then we see your direct order to Mr. Ethan Holt. You're a head of trading, to execute a series of wash trades and dark pool transactions intended to create the illusion of a massive institutional sell-off. A temporary anchor to hold the price down." Thorne's eyes flickered down to the polished surface of the table, avoiding the detective as a steady gaze. He swallowed, the movement visible in his throat, a small, painful confession. That was a stabilizing maneuver," Thorne whispered, the authority in his voice replaced by a threadbare defensiveness. "A market intervention to protect our investors from a hostile, manipulative mob. Manipulation to fight manipulation." Cole observed, his voice remaining level, devoid of judgment, but saturated with moral gravity. "You sought to justify one crime by alleging another. Let's look at the collateral. Mr. Holt, your protege, executed the trades. He signed the paperwork. Your fingerprints are clean, but your intent is on record. Holt is now facing a 7-count indictment for market fraud. You, Julian, are facing internal review, but no criminal charges yet. The power imbalance in that transaction is cinematic, wouldn't you say? You gave the order, knowing the moral and legal pressure it placed on a man who needed your approval. A man with a young family, drowning in his own mortgage." Thorne's hands, which had been resting flat on the table, began to tremble, and he slowly clasped them together, hiding the tremor beneath the table's edge. A small, failing effort at control. Ethan had discretion," Thorne managed, his voice a low, gravelly monotone, the sound of a man fighting for air. "He knew the risks. We all knew the risks. But only one of you had the institutional weight to crush the other," Cole countered, leaning forward now, his voice dropping to a confidential, intense level. The truth is a simple arithmetic. Julian, your monumental, ego-driven, analytical mistake was betting against a collective movement you didn't understand. Your sin was not losing. It was pressuring a subordinate to commit a felony to cover your loss. A desperate, greedy grab for redemption that cost a young man his freedom and his name. Holt's wife, Sarah Holt, told us in her statement that he came home that night, pale, unable to meet her eyes, and simply stared at the wall for 3 hours. He knew what he had done. He was under duress, moral pressure from a corner office that saw him as an expendable asset. The detective pulled a printed document from his single internal chat message from Thorne to Holt, sent at 3:17 a.m. This is your message to him, Julian. It reads, "Fix this, Ethan, or the entire house burns down. You're the only one I trust." The subtext, we understand, was not trust in his skill, but trust in his desperation. When the FBI raided Stone Harbor 2 weeks later, Ethan Holt didn't hesitate. He took full responsibility, convinced he was protecting the firm and protecting you. It was a singular act of self-destruction born from loyalty and fear. Tell me, Julian, what was your posture that morning when Ethan walked into your office? His face sunken, ready to fall on his sword for your mistake. Thorne finally looked up, his eyes now wet, not with tears of sorrow, but with the painful, burning humiliation of a once powerful man stripped bare by accountability. The silence stretched for a full 20 seconds, a vast, echoing space filled only by the distant, muffled sound of traffic and the heavy beat of a collapsing empire. I told him he was doing the right thing for the future of the firm, Thorne confessed, his words barely audible, a fragile admission that was instantly swallowed by the atmosphere of the room. I let him believe that. I let him take the fall. I let one wrong choice compound into a moral catastrophe. The $700 million loss felt abstract. Ethan's face, that's what's real. That's the crime I committed. He paused, breathing a long, shuddering breath, the controlled posture finally breaking under the weight of his own moral failure. Detective Cole simply nodded, closing his file. The documentary camera focuses tightly on Thorne's crumpled face, then slowly pulls back, leaving him isolated in the vast, cold office. The stakes had been money, but the price was a soul. The collapse wasn't a stock crash. It was the destruction of a man's ethical core, fueled by the corrosive mixture of power and unacknowledged mistake. Sometimes, one wrong choice can destroy a lifetime. Learn from their story. Choose kindness. Choose life. This was just the beginning. The most mysterious and shocking crime stories are still ahead. Subscribe to Crime Flow Narratives and be among the first to uncover what comes next.